Hi guys, Jess Hartley here. So last week I was out at Radcon, which is this amazing gaming and science fiction convention out in Central Washington. And they'd been kind enough to invite me out to be their writer guest of honor. And as part of my duties, I was a participant in a bunch of different panels. For those of you who haven't been to a convention like this or haven't attended panels, they're basically 1-hour talks on a particular topic. And the audience is invited to ask questions or participate and add their insights. And usually there's between 1 and 5 panelists, ranging from professionals in a particular area to enthusiastic fans. It's a lot of fun. The first panel that I did at Radcon was one called Can You Really Carry That? And it's all about encumbrance in role-playing games or in fiction. I'm going to read the description to you because I can't memorize it all. So it is, have you ever read a story or played an RPG game where the player or protagonist had a plethora of weapons and survival gear? Did you ever wonder how they could walk, let alone trek through the steaming wastelands to fight the ultimate battle? How much can people really carry? What do most common types of weapons, ammunition, blades, and various period and modern survival equipment weigh? Come listen to our panel to discuss this important part of your story and up your game. So we had an amazing group of panelists. There was myself, there was Dr. Mark Rounds, who was the moderator for the panel. And a moderator serves to keep the conversation flowing. They normally come prepared with some additional questions to kind of keep things going if the panelists kind of run out of things to say, or to keep things on topic. They also perform a very important role, which is to ensure that none of the panelists or audience members take up more than their own fair share of time, because, well, some of us are a little prone to kind of dominating conversations. So a good moderator is a really, really wonderful thing to have on a panel. And Dr. Mark was very, very good. Also, there was a gentleman named Merrow and game designer John Wick, and myself. And I was lucky enough to be able to record the entirety of this panel. Now, it's kind of long. It's just about an hour. So you may want to set aside some time to listen to it. But I think it's well worth it. We had a lot of fun. We covered some really, really cool topics. And I really wanted to share it with you in case you hadn't had a chance to see a panel, or in case you were just really interested in this topic. So before we go any further, I'm going to remind you, if you like this vlog, go ahead and hit the like button, give me a thumbs up. If you love it, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to I had several other panels that I was able to record, and I'm going to be editing them and putting them out on the vlog. So if you hit that bell, that'll give you notifications when I put new things up. I'm dropping 2 or 3 different vlogs a week. So if you want to hear about those when they come out, go ahead and hit the bell, subscribe to the channel. And with no further ado, here is our topic on Can You Really Carry That? Who's moderating? Are you moderating?
I think I am.
Tag, you're it.
I was going to wait. Someone said,
Not
I'll moderate. Yeah.
Nice try, nice try.
So, genesis of this panel is basically running a number of RPG games and a number of board and miniature games, and people deciding, well, gosh, I got to have some of this and some of that. And, you know, need 100 feet of rope and 400 rounds of ammunition and food for 6 days and
10-foot pole.
Oh yeah, need one of them. Yeah,
11-foot pole, so it spans the distance.
Right. And I started working out the math, and you need 3 Sherpas. You know, so what can you legitimately carry? What is the, you know, it's for the realism of, you know, either of your writing or from your or for your game. What's legitimate? I mean, you know, one of the things I've always liked about the Indiana Jones character, he's got like 4 things, right? And he uses them all kinds of different interesting ways, versus the standard RPG player who has 47 things in a little armored vehicle, I guess. I don't know how they move all that stuff around. Donkey, there you go.
Bag of holding.
Oh, there you go. But so that's where this came from. You know, where I come from on this is, you know, my name is Mark Rounds. My day job is I teach and do research into cybersecurity at University of Idaho. But I've got 4 books out now. One is a zombie apocalypse trio, And the new book, Commonality Games, it's dystopian. And then I've just placed a piece in the Other Worlds anthology. And all of that stuff is available in the dealer's room at Book Universe. And with that, I'll pass it off to my colleagues here, and they can tell you about themselves.
Do you want to start, Sean?
Okay, my name is Sean Merrow. I've been playing since around 84, 85, Merp 2nd edition.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I've played lots of games since, and that's it. You got the player. I don't know if anyone's seen the pictures. It's one person dressed up, and he has like 4 rifles, a rocket launcher, grenade launcher, heavy body armor. Yeah, things get nuts here with some players, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, don't forget the first aid kit and 3 canteens.
Oh yeah, but I've been published by Palladium Books. Remember their art when they had Whipper running, they suspended the Whipper currently. I have some stuff except for the books. I have something coming up. Okay. Yeah, that's why I'm here.
I'm Bongo.
Good timing, John.
Everything is timing.
Why don't you bail him out?
Hi, I'm Jess Hartley. I'll be playing John Wick during this panel. I'm, for the last 15 years or so, I've been a writer, editor, and game developer. Most of my published work has been for White Wolf Onyx Path. I've written some stuff for John Wick Presents. And most recently, I'm doing some stuff for Green Ronin for their Blue Rose gaming system.
Which is awesome.
Which is amazing. I'm also a very avid LARPer and have been. For the last 5 years, I've been playing really heavily in a Legus Touch Boffer LARP that's a post-apocalyptic zombie LARP. And more so than any amount of mental figuring about it, trying to practically play a weekend-long event where I'm literally carrying around, as many weapons as my character thinks that they need, has really brought out to me how impractical many of my historic fantasy character encumbrances have been, because even just things like throwing knives, like how do you practically speaking, as a woman wearing a bandolier of throwing knives, not very comfortable, especially not when you're trying to do anything other than combat. So, what does your character do the rest of the time? What do they do with those 47 weapons when they're taking the horses to the creek to go get water, or when they're trying to, cook some food for dinner, or go to the bathroom? Oh my God, how many layers do you have to take off to go to the bathroom in armor? It's crazy. So that's kind of where I'm coming at it from.
Hi, I'm John Wick. I've been my first role-playing game was Call of Cthulhu in 1981. I started designing role-playing games in 1995, and over the course of that period of time, I've designed over 30 role-playing games, and I have never, ever, ever once had rules for encumbrance. And I have never used rules for encumbrance, because encumbrance is dumb. Nobody uses it, nobody likes it, and if you impose it on your players, they will go and find another game master. It adds nothing to the story. If you think about things like Conan, go see the original Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movie. First of all, it's so macho, but it's also so awesome. It's this big hot male mess, and he has one weapon all the way through the entire movie. One. He has one. He wears armor in like the last 5 minutes, and it does nothing. It adds nothing to your story. I was going to invoke Indiana Jones too. Indiana Jones has a gun and a whip and a bag
And a notebook.
and he has a notebook, and he has a hat. The hat's really important because if you lose the hat,
You're no longer Indiana Jones.
you're no longer Indiana Jones. But the hat is the most important
Keeps
thing.
him from getting heat stroke when the sun shines on
Yeah,
him.
That too. Yeah. But
you know, water in it.
it's really about if role playing games, and I'm talking about role playing, and we can talk about LARPs too, because I played in Jess Heinig's Dying Kingdoms LARP in Los Angeles, and one of the most amazing things I ever saw in any role playing game or LARP or anything, because it's a buffer LARP where you run up and you hit people, and one of the most amazing things I ever saw was when a group of D&D players charged 2 monsters and just charged them, right? And the monsters obliterated them because they played like D&D players. They went, "Oh, I'll just run in and hit things," and the monsters just murdered them. And then I was like, oh, so I was playing one of the monsters, and I said, Jess, why are you doing this? He said, I'm teaching them how to fight. And it was, and then after that, they started using techniques like they had a shield wall with other people throwing things over the shield wall. And I was like, oh, that's why he's doing this. That's great. But yeah, encumbrance is stupid.
I think, for me at least, and John has very strong views on gaming. I think I know that was probably the most understated statement I will make the entire convention. But I think what really is important to me at a gaming table is that the players are playing the kind of game that they want. And if you're playing with people who like doing the little fiddly bits and they're less about, say, the actual role play, the playing of the persona of their characters, and they're more into like the mechanic-y dungeon crawly kind of thing, then it can be a fun thing for them to fiddle with, or if they like doing that. That's not a role-playing game by John's definition, so
No,
it inherently...
it's a miniatures game.
Yeah, it's a miniatures game, so...
Okay. Just to throw a little gasoline on the fire, because that's fun. Part of writing a good plot, a good story, is getting your characters, especially if they're real humans, to be inventive. And part of being inventive, go back to the Indiana Jones thing, he has 4 or 5 items and he makes it work. I've always wondered where he gets the money. That bag must be really full. But the basics are, a limited resource set. And the other advantage of that is you can get into the game a lot faster. Okay, you got 20 pounds worth of stuff. Because 20, 30 pounds is really all you can probably carry and be functional. And even then, as you're saying, one of my other hobbies is, I suppose it's LARPing, it's Civil War reenacting.
Yeah.
And the standard infantry soldier in the Civil War period wore 32 pounds of gear. Doesn't sound like a lot until you got packing.
So there's an interesting.
There you go.
There you go. Yep.
There's an interesting comparison with what Mark is saying to money in role-playing games. When you start out a new character, like in D&D, they give you a certain amount of money that you can spend on your gear, and that's all you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a limiter at first, because you have to choose what equipment, and you are going to have one weapon. But then in a typical game, you go along and find things and you can pick them up, or you find treasures and you can sell them and get more money. And so as you progress, it becomes less of a limiter. And I wonder, but see, the weight equivalent would not change.
Except
You
it
can
does
still
because
carry
there's kind of
30 pounds is 30 pounds, and if you get more stuff, you still have to figure out if you're going to get a pack pony or whatever.
Yeah, creative players get around that with, as the gentleman was saying in the background, the bag of holding when I was playing D&D type stuff was that was always all of the characters at the table's favorite thing, because it was the loophole that let you get around that encumbrance, that realistic thing, which
Well, it's because the way that D&D is built, and that D&D clones are built, is that the game is about murdering people who don't look like you, so you can go through their pockets for spare change. So you
Or
murder.
going and finding stuff and stealing it.
Yeah, or
And
stealing
taking
it.
it back and selling. I mean, the archaeology in D&D.
So
Pillage that room.
the conflict that is presented in D&D is especially like after 3rd edition, when gamers started wearing golf bags. I have my silver sword for werewolves, and I have my bronze sword for this monster, and I have this sword for this, and it's a golf bag of swords, and you have this, and it's about the whole game is about here is treasure, here is the player, here are hindrances, and the whole game is about acquiring the treasure and overcoming the hindrances. And the clever way of doing this is to present you with multiple kinds of monsters that you can overcome. So, we're going to need potions for this, and we're going to need this for that, and this for that. Instead of making this the player and the goal, and making this moral decisions. Okay, moral dilemmas. Okay, now how's your 11-foot staff going to help you now? And the key to game mastering, I'll be doing my Play Dirty seminar tomorrow, But the key to game mastering is not presenting the players with a boss monster that's going to prevent them from getting their goals. It's presenting them with choices that they don't want to make. It's presenting them with moral problems that they don't want to choose. They don't want to. Either way, you lose. That's how stories work. And so then, and my key phrase in Play Dirty is their character sheets cannot protect them. You can carry whatever you want. I don't care what you want to carry. 500 pounds of equipment, go for it. When you encounter the problem where you have to choose between A and B, everything in your backpack is useless. It's your character making a choice they don't want to make. Otherwise, otherwise it's just a board game. It's like, can we get from A to B? Yeah, by having the right equipment. Okay.
But some people enjoy that style of playing a game, or that activity, as you and I were talking about earlier.
Yes,
that
it's an activity.
And so within the concert, I think for the purpose of the panel, we're specifically talking about how do you handle that in those kinds of games, because otherwise the answer is very simply just you don't worry about it, and then you guys can all go have a coffee while we wait for the next panel.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I mean, none of this is required attendance. It's all voluntary. I'm paying to do this. Wait, how did this work out?
I'm sorry, I was going to do one more thing. So one of the greatest video games ever made was the first Halo game. And the first Halo game was brilliant for a lot of reasons, but the best reason was this. All of the first-person shooters before Halo, you're a Swiss Army knife of death. You have the knife and the pistol and the shotgun and the sniper rifle and the submachine gun and the rocket launcher and the grenade launcher and the BFG and
then in your left hand.
Yeah. That's exactly right. However, in Halo, what happened was that they said you get to carry 2 guns.
Yeah.
That's it. You can carry 2 guns. And each of the guns was useful in a different way. So the shotgun was really good against the flood enemies.
And had a limited amount of ammunition.
And they had limited amount of ammunition. So the shotgun was really good against flood enemies, and the Covenant weapons were really good against the Covenant enemies, and the pistol was fantastic. So you're walking around, you have the shotgun and you have the rocket launcher, and you come across the pistol, and you're like, I really want the pistol, but I have to drop one of these to pick that up. That is a way to handle encumbrance in a game that's meaningful, because you're limiting the player's choices and saying you get 2, that's all you get.
And that's that moral encumbrance issue, because you're trying to decide between 2 aspects of something, and each one of them has a direction. I mean, think about the moral issues of using a flamethrower versus carving someone up with a knife. It's much more personal. It's gaming. It's gaming, guys. It's gaming.
So you guys all came to the panel. Do you have input? Do you have questions? Do you have things that you want to talk? Obviously, you already have some very strong differing opinions on things. And sorry, I just kind of ran over the top.
Hey.
Sorry, I'm a moderator by nature. I apologize.
No, I'm a moderator 8 times this week. You got it. It's you.
So did I say?
So when I first heard, when I was reading the thing, my first thought was actually video games. Partially because of video game style, because we all make fun of the JRPG hero character who has the sword on his back that is literally bigger than he is.
How do you draw it?
It doesn't matter.
Right?
That doesn't matter to the game, right?
No.
Because the game isn't supposed to be realistic.
So I guess, it kind of depends on the person. I mean, whether you want realism or extreme fantasy, that's kind of the deciding point on whether you put encumbrance into a thing. But yeah, I always think about that when I think about encumbrance, because it's like, how do you
a doorway,
right?
Yeah.
One of the more interesting things I saw at a convention years ago was they built a 10-foot wide doorway.
An arched doorway, yeah.
Yeah, and they said, okay, you're a D&D party, and normally you guys say 3 abreast. 3 of you line up there. You have a sword, you have a bow, you have an axe. Do something.
Yeah. So you'll been to a storage unit, right? The 10 by 10 storage unit. That's the 10 by 10 room. Go stand in there with, there's 20 orcs in here.
There are. Stuff to play cordwood.
They're really close.
You freed us.
Yes. I have a comic in my called 10 by 10, which is 2 orcs in a treasure chest, and they just sit in there and talk. So kind of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern,
Okay.
just sitting there,
Nice.
going, "Why are we here?" But I really like the point about the big sword. Have you guys seen the League of Battle Angel yet?
Yeah.
Because there is a big honking weapon
Oh,
in
yeah.
that thing, and it's completely impractical. It's just complete, and it doesn't matter because it's awesome, right? Because that's the genre that you're going for. You're going for the big, epic sword that's 2 times bigger than the 4'4" girl is, right? That's
Yeah.
what you're going for, But if you're going for a more realistic, zombie apocalypse, it matters that you have 3 bullets.
Yeah, resource
I think
management.
it's
Right.
probably a different panel, but I think there's an assumption that a bigger blade, a blade that's bigger than you, does more damage, and I would question that. I
Well-
think in the right circumstances, a little dagger
Well, I think
can do more damage than the giant weapon that you can't bring around.
It's very interesting because one of the my major professor when I did my PhD is master of foil, saber, and epee. The typical Renaissance man, right? But he, because of my Civil War hobby, I asked him to show me how to use a saber so that I didn't hurt anybody. I could pull it out and not poke anyone's eye out or anything like that. And I made, we did this for a full summer, every other day. And first thing they got me was he was using a foil. And I'm going, he's going to stop me with a foil? I mean, I had a big honking cavalry saber. The thing I didn't realize is Norman is exceedingly fast. And
Yeah.
one slight side, and we're talking moving maybe this far, he knows right where the sword's going to be, and gotcha. Norman, stop that. I'm trying to learn how to use a saber.
forehead. That's a forehead.
It's like the duel scene from Rob Roy, the 90s, is 80s or 90s with Liam Neeson, which has the Scottish guy with the Scottish sword
He's got a
and
claymore.
it's like a short claymore. It's not a full on carved through. Yeah, but yes,
It's a broadsword, yeah.
Yeah, it's a broadsword. Yeah, and then and he has the epee, right? And it's just
There's a couple empty seats if you want to come on in.
yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
So, because encumbrance, I think is the proper term, it's not just weight, because it's, I run into this just moving furniture in the house. Do you need help, honey? Well, I can lift it, but I can't maneuver it very well.
I can't
Yes,
get it
I
through-
need help.
I
It's
can't
not
get it
heavy,
through the
it's just
doorway.
awkward,
Right,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
it's just bulky. So, and which means when you're trying to be realistic to the nth degree, it's almost impossible because you have unwieldiness as a factor of encumbrance as well as its weight.
Well, and
And how do you quantify that?
Well, and the other aspect is, I've discovered using a Civil War uniform, they don't do zippers. It's all buttons. You got to use the bathroom.
But
I'm holding it, man. I'm not going.
And you think it's bad for the men, the women have.
Oh, I
worse.
know. But the other aspect of this is, at least running for the public I've got, you don't want to jar their sense of their sense of disbelief. You've presented them a situation that's not very likely. I wrote 3 books on a zombie apocalypse. Folks, I hate to break your heart. The odds of a zombie apocalypse happening is pretty small.
That's not at all disappointing to me.
Yeah.
I find that very reassuring.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like flush toilets and good medicine and going to the restaurant and say, I'll have a cappuccino, please. I like all of that. But if you've got, with especially with my fan base, if the magazine doesn't match, if it weighs too much, if you're putting the wrong bullet in it, they will tell me. And so you don't want to jar them out of their fantasy, right? The goal, the goal of all of this, is a fantasy. We're doing something. I mean, if we were to write a book about our normal workaday world, what did you do? Well, I got up in the morning, I had breakfast, I had tea, and then I walked to work, and I talked to some students who really didn't want to be there. And then I went and did some research that no one's likely to read. and then I taught some more students, and then I came home and my wife and I talked about the things that no one else cared about, and we went to bed. Do you want to read that book? No. What do you want to have someone go out and swash their buckle, and as long as you can keep them in that space, that's good. You nudge them out, and they don't come back in, and you lose them. You lose a reader.
So there's a lot of different ways to make movies. Two directors that I really admire, well, one of them until recently, Clint Eastwood makes what he calls authentic films. So when he was making Unforgiven, he was talking about how he was far less interested in making it realistic and far more interested in making it authentic, so that when they point out a certain type of rifle, like the rifle that Morgan Freeman is carrying, which I can't remember what it was called, and loading it and unloading it is a process. And so there's a scene where they're unloading and loading the weapon, and it's a process, and you see that. So it's far less important for him to be realistic and far more important to be authentic. And so the viewer looks at it, and also there's a severe lack of music in the film, because he doesn't want to draw you out of the experience. He wants you to sink into it and feel part of it. And then the other side is Quentin Tarantino, who wants to remind you that you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
He wants you to know that. And if you stop thinking that, he will remind you in big ways, right? And I think that a lot of what we're talking about is, what is the approach that you want to take with your audience? If you want an audience that really does enjoy authenticity, then you should be authentic. But if you want to have an audience that doesn't care about that, then neither should you. It's something that when you look at it from those points of view.
As mentioned on the book theme, I play Pathfinder Society. They're moving away from weight, because yes, my water bottle weighs more than your hat, but your hat's going to take up more room in your backpack, so it's now bulk. They're looking into how much space it takes.
Well, space is important. The other thing, you talk about this between the water bottle and the hat. This thing just kind of sets on my head, and a good gust of wind can blow it away. That's fixed to your belt. You're not likely to lose it. Trying to, the other aspect is, that we don't think about in most role-playing games much, is how do you live in this stuff? Have you ever had full plate on before? Yeah, I heard veteran in the back there.
Talk about a process to get into.
Yeah.
It's a process to get into. If it has a full gambeson, and it's hotter than Jesus, and you talk about riding a horse or running and all those things, and you're sweating a river. Yeah.
This was a couple of years ago, I was at a panel that was talking about armor and how in a lot of movies, especially, we do the female armor, which is basically the boob armor, and it's actually useless.
It's worse.
It's worse than useless.
It's worse than
You
useless.
can get hurt with
Thing
it.
that they call armor, which
Except in
is
Hackmaster.
no armoring purpose.
Well, in Hackmaster, you get a +4 for women in armor.
Because Hackmaster has a certain attitude.
That's right.
And goes full in, right? They're not. Hackmaster does not go halfway. Right? And when you brought that up, the other thing is putting on armor is really rough. Putting on authentic women putting on authentic dresses, which they are sewn into by other people. Is that important to you? Is that important? I mean, if it is, then it should be.
Does it help you tell the story?
Yes. Does it help you tell the story?
Is it, some mundane task like putting on a dress or putting on your armor can be very useful when you want to have two characters have a moment to talk. Give me a hand with this, and then you, while you're struggling into that, you can have this heartfelt conversation about whatever moves that plot line along. And so, even though it's mundane, even though it's a pain, sometimes you need to have a conversation. Yeah.
I have trouble with the book that I've gone the whole length of the novel and the character's never slept. He's never eaten. He's never rested. Ever. He's never done anything mundane. I don't need to know every time he goes to the bathroom or grabs a sandwich, but I think it should be represented that, yes, he too lives a life as a human being on the planet or whatever planet we're on.
Yeah, you don't want to bump again that whole issue of disbelief. You want to make sure that, oh yeah, he's real. Yeah, okay, yeah, he's real. He had a sandwich 2 days ago, but
Right, but still.
yeah, but
I'm assuming
but
he's eaten since, because he ate once.
yeah, and when that sandwich came out, there was probably a reason other than just eating.
Correct.
If you've written it properly, you're saying, yeah, he's sitting down to eat, and while he was eating, he was cogitating about, he was thinking about, he was talking to this character. Over in the distance, he noticed his arch enemy right over the something, right? There, but that mundane bit of life connects you.
And it's woven in. It's
Yeah.
not. the
It's not a
focus.
thing.
It's not a focus.
Yes.
It's a terrible book and it's a terrible movie, but in Gone with the Wind, the fact that she doesn't have a dress to wear is a plot point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the
And-
absence,
and-
the absence of
It's the absence of
important
something.
things can be. I have a character in the novel that I'm polishing right now that she gets chased away from a place when she's still in her dressing gown and she has no shoes, and because of this, it ends up turning into a problem because she steps on something out in the wilderness, pierces her
wound,
foot, gets a fever. It's an important factor, even though I've never really talked about, okay, well in the first chapter she's wearing these shoes, and in the second chapter she's wearing these shoes, but you assume that the character is wearing shoes until they're not anymore.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Die Hard, he spends the whole movie without shoes, right?
Oh,
But that's
yes.
important,
Right.
right? It's
But that's a
important.
plot point.
It's a plot point,
Yeah.
and it comes from a natural place. It comes from a conversation he has on the plane, which is how do you get over jet lag? I hate flying. Well, I fly all the time. Let me give you this advice. And it comes from the natural place in the story, and because we were just talking about the difference between because and then. Were we talking about
Because and
and then? Yeah.
yes.
And then that's for a different thing. But anyway, yeah, it's a natural thing, and it's important to the story. If it's not important to the story, then then why does it matter?
Well, and there's a dichotomy here. We're talking about a game versus a story. Properly done role-playing games are people sitting around, basically sitting around the fire telling themselves a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If you have to think about the 6 people that are sitting around the fire, and what story do they want to hear? Or tell, or both, right? I mean, what story do they want to be a part of? Really, when you read a book, it's not because you want to read about someone. You want to be there. You want to be Han Solo. You want to, you want to be Princess Leia. You want to go out and do something. You don't. And so you try to write your characters, or the way they're set up so that they're more the everyman sort of characters, so that other people can plug in. You want to have differentness represented, so that, yeah, I'm like that guy. And you can pull along with it. And part of that is the stuff you carry. I mean, I've often thought about this. I've not done it, but I've thought about a short story. Okay, you're on campus. You're walking between classes. What are you carrying? Okay, zap, zombie apocalypse. What do you do?
Die.
No. I mean, if you die, there's no story. I mean, I want to write a story, so I'm here, and I've got my briefcase, and it's got a bunch of homework in it, and I got 2 pens, and my watch, and a laptop computer, and a bunch of cables, because I'm a nerd and I have cables for everything. And my lunch. What's in there? You've got to get back to the house. You've got to get back, get back to the fire station, what have you. Be inventive. Do stuff. We talk about the encumbrance. One of the things that, you talk about that. One of the things that I like including it for is because it forces you to be inventive. So you're not just, that armored tank. You've got weaknesses, and you've got to, improvise, adapt, and overcome.
So it sounds like the general assessment is that if you're leaning towards story, then items and encumbrances are only really important when they're plot points or missing things that the character and goals that the characters have. Yeah, exactly. And if you're playing like an RPG or a video game that's more about miniatures and fiddly bits and that kind of thing, then they're one more mechanic to work with to encourage your players to think outside the box or to come up with creative things.
Like, I'm thinking of like Diablo, the Diablo games, where you go along and you start out with your basic ordinary gear, and then you go along and you find stuff, and you can pick up anything that you find, and you can take things back and sell them, and that's how you get some cash to buy items that you see that you want in the store. But you have a certain number of equipment spaces, and after you fill them all up,
You're done.
then your character won't pick anything more up, and they keep telling you their bag is full. And it's silly because
I
a
hold the
pseudo, like a chest piece and a ring take up the same space. It's
Yeah,
a slot,
yeah.
right? Each one fills a slot, but still, it's a limiter. It makes you decide what to keep.
Well, game design.
But-
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's one of the things to RPGs is you have people who play RPGs that are playing them to play the resource management game.
Yeah.
Okay, there are people that enjoy the resource management part of the role-playing game. It's not really about the story. The story's great. The story's good. It's what carries me along in the game, but it's not as important as, my resource management, how strong am I, how much power am I getting, how am I getting more points to do this. My end goal is to this, and usually that comes from some sort of end goal, though. They usually do have an end goal saying, I want to have my own tower in the wilderness and be a grand wizard. And in order to get there, I have to do my resource management to the point where I have saved up enough and got enough power and whatnot. And so,
And there are a number of games that.
and there are a lot of people who play RPGs that play them for that aspect, the resource management. They're not interested in the story so much as
Story's more just like window
making
dressing.
sure they win.
Yeah.
And
Then they should play Descent
so there's
or Talisman.
but they like D&D.
Oh,
That's their
because
favorite
D&D is
game.
a board game.
Yeah. So
It's a very complicated board game. It has nothing to do with role playing. You can successfully play D&D without role playing.
that's
So
true.
you had a point there.
Well, I think part of resource management is also kind of discovering yourself. It's you try different weapons and you find out the one you like the most. Because I find when I don't deal with encumbrance, I just keep a bunch of stuff because I can and only touch about 20% of it because I've used it once, discovered I don't really like this, but I don't have to throw it away, so who cares? It's just in my bag.
You've got literally
you got
the
the bag
golf,
of
golf
bag of
club
holding.
bag.
Yeah.
You're a toon character.
Yeah.
You're like Spider Ham. It's like, here, this will fit in your pocket.
Right?
But the reality of people who are skilled with weapons, they aren't skilled with 47 different weapons.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
No.
Well, I was an Air Force officer at one point, so
So that's your
several.
job.
Yeah.
that's what they pay you to do.
But even then, we're talking several, right? And I was much more deadly with an airplane than I was with a pistol, even though I had to learn how to use the pistol.
And they weren't going to send you out there and expect you to handle artillery either.
We
Right.
certainly hope not, because
They have
we could all die.
Trained for the artillery.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's part of the storyline. One of the books I just set down and I will not pick up, and I'm not going to mention the title. Player one, the main protagonist. Also, he's an archaeologist. Okay, that's cool. I've got friends who are archaeologists. That's cool. Oh, and this one's a hacker too. Okay, fine. Oh, and jujitsu, and
But this person has managed to find 40 hours a day, every day for the last 70 years to learn how to be an expert in all
this
things.
stuff, and then trains.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah,
Yes.
and has no life. You're going, no, this isn't real. Again, it bumped me out of my sense of disbelief. I couldn't be there. Yeah.
I've been thinking about mindset and stuff. Tunnel in the Sky, which is an old Highland juvenile, one of the things that really kind of made me stop and think, this basic story is they get marooned on another planet, but this guy they've been carrying on a student trip, they've been carrying some basic stuff with them. And the hero is totally amazed by this young lady who's got a totally different concept of what you should carry. One of her big things that she has to have is a saucepan. Okay, and I can't remember all of the details, but the thing is, she's very effective at surviving. He's very effective at surviving, but they look at it in very different ways. What's important to them? And it really made me stop and think, oh, you know, the way that I would approach this may not be right for everybody. And so the stuff that they were carrying became a plot point that made me think more about how do you live your life. It was an interesting way to approach it.
That brings to mind a story. I'm a storyteller, so it kind of happens. But a story about my grandmother. She ran a diner in Great Falls, Montana, from the the dark part of the Depression until my teen years, and I worked in it. And there was one moment where someone, the details of the story doesn't matter, but he was going to cause a fuss in the in the restaurant. Was going to get physical. And my grandmother, I remember watching this to this day. Reached underneath the counter, pulled out a number 10 frying pan, and rang his chimes. And you're going, oh, that's got uses. You can use more than you can do more than cook eggs in that thing.
Mm-hmm. A couple of years ago, there was a big meme that was going on around the internet that was like, what is your zombie preparedness escape plan? And a lot of people, especially gamers, were like, oh, well, I've got this weapon and I've got this weapon and I would do this and I would do this. And I was always like, I'm going to get as far away from humanity as I can, and my stop on the way out is not going to be the gun store or that kind of thing. It's going to be the place where I can get seeds and books on how to do everything I'm going to need to do from the ground up. Because my best survival is not to try to take on weapons that I don't know how to use or that kind of thing. It's to get away from the rest of y'all who are turned into, blood-sucking monsters and try to plant a farm before winter hits.
So I wrote a Pathfinder supplement called Wick Fantasy, which took each of the standard D&D races and turned them to 11. And then took non-standard D&D races and said you could play them, so we took elves and dwarves, and then we also took goblins and orcs and things and made them player character races. And for the goblins, there's a character class you can play, which is a goblin merchant. And one of the things you get as a goblin merchant is a big caravan of stuff, and you're going around and you can and one of the things you can do is like, do I have this? And so you roll a die and you consult your there's a skill for it for do I have this?
Cargo manifest.
Yes, and my cargo manifest. And if your roll is higher than the gold piece value of the item, then you have it in your cart. And it's like, yeah, I have one of those. Here you go. Mm-hmm. Yes, I have this. Here you go. It's for free this time, right? So that was it's
this one free. Next one costs you some.
This one for free. Next time. So that's the it's like, do you have it? Well, okay. If you're gonna do encumbrance in a role-playing game, again, have a mechanic that is elegant with the setting. Have a mechanic that addresses the setting in some way. Otherwise, it's just math.
Kinder pockets.
Don't talk about Kender. Okay? Kender are chaotic evil sociopaths. Okay, they're awful. I love Tracy and I love Margaret. They're beautiful people who have always been kind and charitable to me. And Kender are sociopathic. Okay, don't want to talk about Kender.
I would say also, we can have fun with the characters. So I was playing the Pathfinder. We needed to buy a pony. Okay, we could not make a savings throw to save our life, but the pony was. So
Pony is the hero.
We came and clearly invested in keeping that pony alive. We're pouring resources into keeping that pony. I was using bond of healing on the pony.
That's awesome.
It became the star of that whole scenario. We can have fun.
That's the typical GM rule, right? The GM comes up with this really elaborate, the really elaborate NPC that the players are going to meet in the tavern. They're on a quest, and they're going to meet this really incredible wizard who's going to send them on this epic quest to go over thousands and thousands of miles. And while they're waiting, they go, "Who's that guy sitting in the corner?" And says, "Oh, his name is Strider, and he's a ranger." He's awesome! Let's go talk to him! Suddenly they're gone.
Yeah. And the flip side of that is you're being a DM and they're going, yes, that you saw a tree. No, there's nothing on that tree. Are there any other trees?
No,
gazebo.
no, there's
Yeah.
only one tree in the entire forest, and you already searched it.
Leave the gazebo
But the
alone.
rocks there. No,
No, it's grass. It's just, oh no, now they're gonna look at the blades of grass.
Part of that comes from choosing your group.
Yeah.
Well, and not if not choosing your group, knowing your group, right? Again, the focus of this is telling a story, and if you don't tell a story they want to hear, they're not going to come back.
The one that gets me is, okay, so the monster has arrived. It's there. And then they fall into a big discussion on who's going to be in front and who's going to have what weapon and who's going
Yeah,
to...
I remember
Which
that.
spells they're gonna throw in which order.
And by now they're dead.
Right.
And yet, if you are these grand warriors that you think you are,
Yeah.
you did that training. You've already worked this out as a contingency plan, okay?
Yes.
Swordsman forward, bowman. You've already done this. You practice it.
Right.
You practice it every night. And you're going, okay, let's just go through the drill again. Do we have to? Yes, we have to.
Yeah.
Doesn't does that show up in your game? No,
The way-
unless it's something you need to move the plot along. You want to show that one of your party members is recalcitrant in some way, or resents someone's authority, or then it's a useful tool. But saying, okay, and now it's time for our tactical drills. Yay.
Well, the way you solve that problem is that you tell the players that when combat starts, the only dialogue they can have is in-character dialogue, and it takes an
Yes.
action.
Yes. Yes.
There you go. You're done. Move along. You'd be amazed how fast combat goes when, if I have to say, hey, move to your left. Okay, end of your turn. Next.
Yeah.
Combat goes really fast when you do that. But yeah. So you guys have any questions about encumbrance and things? Because we have about 15 minutes left.
Is there any, so, I've been talking about encumbrance, you think about things like Elder Scrolls, when the game just stops you from moving once you've taken on too much weight. Is there any, real proper way to, punish, players who are carrying way too much stuff?
There's a lot of ways to do that.
It depends. It depends on the deviousness of your GM. But
The first question would be, why do you want to? Why do you want to put? If your player is having fun with their laundry list of stuff,
Yeah.
why do you want to punish them for that? If they're doing it and it's stopping the other players from having fun, or
I just find that it slows down the pace of the game to a crawl in most of my games, because it becomes, alright, well I gotta search this goblin, alright, I gotta search this goblin, alright, now I gotta search the walls, or I'm gonna go touch all the walls.
So there's a game that came out a long time ago called Power Overkill, Urge Overkill, and it was a questionnaire that you read to the players and they answered before the game started. And the questionnaire was things like, have you ever touched a dead body? Have you ever killed someone? Have you ever killed someone to take something that they're carrying? Have you, and all these really, really deep questions. So you ask them as the players. And then at the end of the game, you ask the questionnaire again. Have you ever murdered someone? Have you ever murdered someone to take something that they owned? Have you ever touched a dead body? And then you compare the answers. But that is here or there. But the whole notion of when I run role-playing games, I try to make violence as violent and bloody and gory and visceral as possible, because I'm very sensitive to violence. I don't like it. I don't like violence at all. And it's not that I think it's unnecessary or anything like that. It's just it makes me really uncomfortable. So when somebody says, "Oh, I swing my sword at his head," and your sword cleaves through his skull into his jaw, half of his jaw drops off. You are sprayed in the face with gore and blood and everything else, and he screams as his eyes bug out as he realizes that he's dying. And you're looking into his face, and he's dying, and your sword did it. You want to attack the next orc? That's. So the question is, how do you want to reward and discourage your players from behavior? There's lots of ways to do it. It's how
that's how you tell a story.
It's how you tell the story.
I mean, so this guy loads up, has 47 items. The rest of the party goes, "See you later, Chuck." Because he's walking, and everyone else takes off in a dead run. You go, "Later,"
And if you've got one player that like stops to check everything, well then you're doing that for your action. What are the rest of you guys doing? Okay, you're doing this thing. Okay, you want to search one more thing? Okay, that's okay. Okay, so now you guys are doing this other cool thing. Okay, and you're looking at that square of wall. Okay, that right there. Okay, you realize you've got 8 more rounds worth of squares of wall to travel that 15 feet. Okay, so the rest of you guys, what are you guys doing for the next 8 rounds? And tell your story if it is causing a problem for the party. If it's one guy that is obviously got a different play style, then you can do it that way, or you can just sit and talk with them. I mean, there's an idea of a social contract at the table, which is like, hey, if you're wanting to play if I'm wanting to play a dungeon crawl and 90% of the players who are at the table are wanting to do the social role play and the moral choices and that kind of thing, then maybe we need to modify our gameplay a little bit to do that. Maybe that person is not in the right kind of game with the rest of the players. Like maybe they really want more of a video game kind of thing, and that's maybe not what you're wanting to tell.
Some of that contract is between you, the one running the event, and the players. Mm-hmm. And if you play a game where, look, you've checked the 19th foot of the wall and you found something,
then you're giving them the reward and
then
encouraging
you're
them
giving
to
the reward
do
to do it. But if they never find anything for that behavior, at a point it'll be considered a waste of time. It should be in your understanding with them that there are certain natural things they will do, and that they will roll for awareness if nothing else, and that encompasses that thing, and they did or they didn't, and you move on. You don't let them do it 90 times to get the reward.
And then reward
Right.
them on the 100th one.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So then they'll go through the 100 to get the
Yes.
one.
That's
And then they'll do the next
in our
100.
group,
Yes.
what I've always done is you have a group of when you have your group of characters, and part of that social contract is when we get together after they're done making their characters and they have decided what their roles are, what they're going to do as a person in the group. We then outline what I call the standard operating procedures, or SOPs. And so if you have the thief character, his SOP is to search every wall, search every dead body, search through everything. That's his SOP, so he's always going to be doing that. And we already assume that, so we don't have to waste game time worrying about the SOPs. The SOPs are happening, and I, as a game master, just tell them, hey, here's what happened after the fight with all your SOPs.
Oh, that's interesting. So you could just be like, this. You've already logged that your thief, when they're going to check the corners, and so if you want to drop something as a storyteller, you can just be like, oh, and by the way, when you check that corner, you find
here's
this.
the secret door that you found in the ceiling. Here's the coin that you found in this guy's dead body. I mean, as the game master, that saves a lot of time and energy for everybody if you have standard operating procedures that are in place for those characters.
In the post-apocalyptic LARP that I belong to, we all take turns playing NPCs. So during your weekend, you play a shift where you're playing zombies and stuff, so that the other guys have something to fight. And one of the mechanics that they use in that is if a creature has loot on it, it tends not to immediately disappear into the ground after it's dead. So that way, instead of the players having to spend, because there's like a mechanic for searching a body, if they kind of know, oh hey, that one fell into the ground, that one fell into the ground, that one's still around. Maybe we need to spend the time searching it. So that kind of speeds things up, because you don't want in this case, you don't want people, literally in this kind of weather, laying on the ground pretending to be dead zombies to
someone pats them down.
To see if somebody's going to pat them down, so it helps speed things up. The other thing with what John was saying is one of my favorite things to do when I'm a zombie that's being searched is to whisper to, because it's a 60 count, and basically people are like searching 1, searching 2. So as they're doing that, rather than just let them continue through their count, I'll whisper to them so that it's quiet enough that the rest of the players who are around can't hear it, but they can. And I'll say things like, okay, you reach inside that, and that was a pocket full of maggots. Okay. Oh, okay, you're elbow deep in this person's viscera now, so you can feel the cold slime around. It feels like sticking your arm into a bowl of cold spaghetti, or little things like that give
You're
them
a
this.
mean person.
I am no, but they love it.
Oh,
because
That's
they're-
storytelling. That's what you're
It's
doing.
Next time
much-
I'm playing Dying Kingdoms, I'm totally stealing.
Yeah, it's so much more interesting for them, and they'll react. They'll be like, oh, ick, yuck, oh, okay, and that'll get the other players, interested in it, and it'll even become a thing. Like they'll come back the next game with a fizz rep of an eyeball or something, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I found this when I'm searching a zombie, or that kind of thing. So it turns it into a more than just a loot grab. It turns it into part of the story and part of the environment that they're dealing with, which is kind of fun.
So we've done a lot of talk about encumbrance and other things in role playing, but in LARPing, do you have? I mean, are there loot bags that they?
So
Carry out and so on?
I've only played in. I can only speak for one boffer LARP. Most of the LARPs that I've done have been theater style LARPs where physical representations, phys reps, are coincidental at best. They have
Index
item cards
yeah.
or that kind of thing. In the boffer LARP, Dystopia Rising, that I play in, they strive for a what you see is what you get aspect. They do have things. They have item cards that represent like base components, and they have a requirement. If you're going to be carrying these base components around, you have to have a bag that is 1 foot by 1 foot by 2 inches deep at least, to give just and now you can carry an infinite amount in that one bag, but you at least have to have a bag. That way you don't have a magic wallet that has all of your item, all of your weapons and armor and potions and that kind of thing. And they do require things like physical representations. If you've got a brew that's a 6-ounce brew, you have to have a bottle that is about, that's not something, so that it represents it. If you have 20 brews, you've got to have 20 bottles.
Okay, so that you have a natural encumbrance limiter
Yeah.
by the
Being
actual,
what you are,
Exactly.
Yes.
But they also recognize that that the story is more important than the thing. So it's kind of loosely enforced / encouraged. And that has changed. It's been very interesting to watch it. When I first started playing about 5 years ago, it was very much like, if you do not have a brew fizz rep for your brew, you cannot use it, and if you use it, you are cheating. And they've gone more away from that, because they realize that the pushback is people don't like to be told that they're bad players just when they're there to have fun with the story. So they're kind of moving things more to a encouraging and supporting positive fizz reps, because we use fizz reps for even things like a workbench, that your character needs a workbench with an item card on it in order to make items. And so if you have if you have this table here, this table could be the fizz rep for your thing. But if you go to the trouble of bringing in a tablecloth that looks like it's wood planking, and you've got a little pretend anvil, and you've got your hammer and your tools there, then the storytellers give positive rewards for that.
Yeah.
That's
Carrots
smart.
are always, in my opinion, better than sticks when it comes to role playing, unless you're dealing with out of game things that then you need to deal with because they're harassment or that sort of thing. Then sticks are very
Which goes back to your question, which is generally in game design you want to reward good behavior and ignore bad behavior, because then players will go, oh, that was a reward, I want the reward, and they will go toward the reward rather than when you punish them, they're like, well, screw you.
right.
That's a
Or they
negative
try to
response.
get around
They try to
it,
get around
or
it, yeah.
Or the common attitude, and they go, well, I'm going to do that 47 times because I don't like you anymore. Versus saying, well, that's nice, and then.
But if you give them an extra little XP or even just a little extra attention from the NPCs, the NPCs come in and go, they look around the tavern and they're like, oh, this is a workbench, but oh, that is an amazing workbench. That person must be a great tinker. I'm going to go to them.
Right.
Those kinds of things can really encourage the the player-driven physical representations and that kind of thing.
Any more questions?
How are we doing time-wise?
Got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes? That's awesome. No more questions.
So,
We used it all up.
We used up all your questions.
We are now unencumbered by questions.
Oh, I see what you
We
did
used up
there.
all.
I didn't like it, but I saw it.
It was a weighty matter.
dude, that's heavy.
Don't encourage.
Yeah, encourage that game.
Positive feedback.
Remember, ignore the behavior you don't want to see.
I know.
I know.
And,
Oh goodness.
yes, I'm holding off. Okay, that there are a couple of lines that would,
Temptations.
but I'm going to avoid them.
So on a closing note, what is the most ludicrous thing that you've seen players try to bring along?
Tactical nuclear warhead.
Oh.
I asked for that in we were playing a Suicide Squad game,
Yeah.
and the gimmick was each of us was a character based on a real Marvel or DC character, kind of like Astro City is based on So I was my character was my version of Bullseye.
Okay.
Which my mutant ability is I can look at you and I know how to kill you. That's my mutant ability. And so our mission was we want you to go into Gotham City and kill Batman. And I said, can I have a thermonuclear weapon? And my buddy Mike goes, whoa! Whoa! I'm like, hey, you walk into Gotham and try to kill Batman. I'll leave the suitcase right in the center of Gotham Central and walk away. Because that's how you kill the Batman.
Everyone else
Whoa!
likes them, but
And the detonation was 20 on the counter.
It's gold pieces.
This many dice, yeah.
Gold pieces?
It's gold pieces. I have 50,000 gold pieces. I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what. Here's 100 quarters.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? 100. Put this in your pocket.
Right?
Okay.
Then multiply that by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5,000.
Yeah. Anybody that's ever been to
Optimistic.
like Wonderland,
These
you
are
just have
mostly made out of
Wonderlands out
nickels
here,
as well,
the
yeah.
nickel arcade kind of things, and you go in and they give you, your $20 worth of nickels, and it's like, I'm a girl, I don't have pockets for this shit. What do I, and if I
They
do,
give you a bowl.
yeah.
Chuck E. Cheese stuff.
It was-
They give you a bowl.
In old school D&D, that's one of the things you had to do is you had to reduce the size of gold pieces down to where they were a dime.
Even
the
still,
gold pieces a dime.
I have 50,000 of them.
Yeah.
What?
Many years ago, my father got
Sell them for jewelry.
my father,
Jewelry with them.
his job, he played professional football at one point, so he was a very, very large man, very powerful. And a friend of his said, "Hey, I drive for Wells Fargo. I need a co-driver. You want to go along?" And Dad said, "Sure, yeah." And then he found out why. He was taking $10,000 to the mint to be destroyed in dimes. And the reason they wanted him along was not because he would be able to defend the dimes. It was because they needed someone to carry the crap.
It's still, 10,000 pounds of feathers is still
10,000
10,000
pounds of feathers.
Exactly. Yeah, anybody that's rolled quarters and then stored them, one roll of quarters isn't that bad. It's heavy, but it's not that bad. But when you start getting 20 rolls of quarters, that's a huge
Don't
amount.
put them in a paper bag.
Right?
Yeah. Says the veteran of said disaster.
Yeah, we have we throw all our change in a 5-gallon water bottle, and we made the mistake. We lived in the same house for 10 years, and we were getting ready to move, and the thing was a good half to 3/4 full of change, and then we realized that we had to tip it over onto something and then put a sheet down and then kind of try to tip the bottom of. We had to empty it because we literally couldn't. You couldn't pick it up. It was just too heavy for and awkward for the space of it, and trying to get that to the bank to run through the change machine was how do I even a backpack wouldn't work because it was just too heavy to use to move.
And no handles.
Yeah, exactly.
It's time for the hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
My players are real creative, and we're at D&D, and they would instead of taking into all the gold and whatnot, if they didn't have a bag of holding whatever, they would get a cart and they'd load it all onto the cart and drag its treasure. They'd drive it into town, find the biggest city, and they would turn it all into stock certificates.
There you go.
That's creative.
Encumbrance was one of the strangest things I've ever ran into. I was playing in an Aftermath game, which is a kind of
I remember
after the fall kind of thing. And our party ran into, we found a sugar silo, a warehouse where sugar had been stored. And sugar was like really valuable. But what do you do with an entire silo of it? Because you can't.
You create massive inflation.
Well, we were worried. I mean, we had to think about things like, can we transport this into town? If so, we can only transport part of it at a time. People are going to realize we've found this, and they're going to come back and take it over. We can't set up a store here because then other people will come in and take it over. It was very much a problem-solving kind of issue.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with something that is valuable but absolutely not very portable at all?
Mm-hmm. Plus, I mean, you flood the market, the price will drop anyway.
Exactly. So you want to be like, yeah, there's a whole lot of aspects to that.
Is the last D&D game I played in, the dungeon master had set up, we're going to go to the dungeon and blah, 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 and we got there and I talked to the players. And he says, okay, so the entrance to the dungeon is that we camp here. So why? It's because there's other people in there and we're going to wait for them to come out.
And we're going to rob them?
We're going to rob them.
Oh my God!
Because they're going to be all beat up. They're going to be out of spells. They're going to be out of healing potions.
Just trying to make it for the exit.
So what you're saying is you were the D&D version of a camper.
Yeah, damn right.
Yeah.
Talk about your moral dilemma for the DM.
Oh yeah.
when we lived down in Arizona, I mean that kind of thing is actually happening in the drug world.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's an old strategy.
Yeah.
I didn't invent it.
Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Yeah.
There you go. So
All right, that's about
are we
time.
done? Well, thank you guys so much for
Thank you.
joining us. Got a lot more panels. Please come and visit. And I'm sure if you think of any questions when you get outside the door, which is how this always works for me, just snag us in the hallway and come chit chat. Thanks.
Oh.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you guys have made it this far, leave me a note down in the comments and tell me what you liked about this panel. It'll help us really make certain that when we run this kind of panel in the future, we can bring the information that's absolutely of most interest to the audience. So tell us about what you liked or what you didn't like so that we can make it better next time. And like I said before, be sure to subscribe so when new panels, I recorded 3 or 4 of them at this convention, when new panels get edited and uploaded, you'll hear about them, okay? Thanks very much and have a great day.